Good evening, seniors, and welcome to Senior Reading with Coach Noel. Today, I'm going to be doing my first video, primarily because of COVID-19. I think one day when we look back at these days, we'll all have some pleasant memories along with the negative memories that we have. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself first. I am the student government advisor for Oak Ridge High School. I am the tennis coach at Oak Ridge High School, and I am the senior reading teacher. Getting through my class with a passing score in reading means you get a high school diploma, and that is the goal. As we do on the first day of school, I want to introduce a little bit about myself. I have been teaching for about 15 years. Back in, I think it was 2013, they asked me to teach senior reading. Our graduation rate at that point was about 75%. And in actuality, we sent over 100 kids home without a high school diploma. Over the past 6-7 years, we have improved through experience, through practice, through research to find a way to graduate almost every student at Oak Ridge High School. The graduation rate last year, of course, was 100% because every student who was affected by COVID-19 got their high school diploma. However, the year before that, it was 98.5%. This meant we went from 19th in the county to number 5. We beat schools like Winter Park, Lake Nona, Windermere. We had the higher graduation rate amongst all of these schools. So we're very proud of the fact, and one guarantee I can make you, if you'll just listen to me and do the strategies that I teach you, that you will go home with a high school diploma in May and be able to attend college. That being said, I'd like to introduce a little bit about my family. This is my daughter up on the wall. She is a doctor of physical therapy, the first doctor ever in our family. She practices near the Villages, so I get to see her quite often. And the other is my star student, Ravel Lubin, from 5 years ago, who that's his certificate where he made the Hall of Fame at the University of Florida. Ravel was actually someone who also struggled with reading and had to take my reading class, but he did pass his junior year of high school. That's how we met. But just to show you the success stories that can happen when you listen and you learn. The best example I can give you, I had a student, her name was Jasmine Heath, about 5 years ago, that was struggling to get a passing score on ACT and SAT. She went all year long. She did not have a passing score until we got to the very last test in June. And quite honestly, as an instructor, I was almost defeated in her purpose. And, you know, both of us had a hard time not giving up. She was in student government. She was homecoming queen of the school. She was probably one of the nicest people I ever made. And she passed in June on the last exam. She is now working on her master's at UCF. So what I tell my students when they walk in the classroom is this: believing in yourself is the first step to passing. We have to put away those things that have been said to us negatively that tell us, teachers, peers, students, and sometimes even family, that you can't do it when I know you can. Changing your mindset into a successful student is the beginning of your future. Many of you come to me from being defeated all the way from grade school to high school. And many of you have a hard time believing that you're smart. I need you to know that you are as smart as anyone else that I've ever taught. God gave us brains, And yes, there are some people who are true geniuses. But for the most part, all of you are just as smart as the student that is taking the AP course. The problem is more educationally, perhaps along the way you fell behind and you didn't get caught up. Many of you have other things that have happened to you at home, sometimes being bullied at school. These things all presented challenges that were hard for you to overcome. However, when it comes to education and being able to succeed, make good grades, behave in the classroom, have good teachers, you can do it. There is no doubt about that. And that's what is the first thing I need you to believe, because you don't come into my classroom without knowing that you matter. And you don't come into my classroom without knowing that you can do it. So we're going to see many videos along the way that are inspirational to both me and you. And know this, I grew up in a neighborhood myself without money, amongst lots of crime, around many of the same things, maybe not as bad, maybe, as you did. So that's why I do understand, and that's why I have a passion to teach you how to get this high school diploma, how to go to college. And I promise you this, I will be there for you. I will be there for you when you sign up. I will be there for you as you celebrate when you pass. And I will be there for you when you fail. But we will never give up. As long as you don't give up on yourself, I'm never giving up on you. Last year, I had a student from Jones High School who graduated in 2010 come to me for tutoring. And she came to me because of another student who didn't graduate, who had passed. And she passed on her first try of getting her ready for the SAT after 10 years of living at home, still with her mom, wanting desperately to be independent, but knowing not having a high school diploma was preventing her from being the success story that she wants to be. She has now enrolled at Valencia College and is planning to go into nursing. And there is no doubt in my mind she's going to make it. I need you to have those same beliefs. Last year, when we got to the end of the year, there were only 18 when we left school that hadn't passed yet, just like the previous year. And they were on their way to pass at 100%. So in many ways, they were blessed by the virus. There's one thing positive. They didn't have to worry. They were all given their high school diplomas. Now for you this year, it may be the most difficult time to be a senior. Much more difficult than the ones that left last year. Now you have to come into an environment which none of us feel safe yet. I am hoping as an instructor, I can make you feel that way. And perhaps this is the way to do it, through video and learning and working online. I don't know. This is my first attempt. But I promise you one thing, if I have to get on the phone and stay with you all night long to make sure you get a passing score, I will. Now, so the first thing we want to do is let's talk about what are the things we need to do to get ready. Well, one thing we need to do for sure is we need to get registered for the August test. I now have plenty of waivers to register each and every one of you. All you have to do is get me your username and password. And the reason I say that is because it will be much faster for me to get the waiver on your computer and then get it back to you so that you can finish registering. You'll have a choice. You can send me a headshot photo and a headshot photo only so that I can attach your photo to SAT, or most of you can probably do it yourself. You can get me on the phone. My number is 352-201-1771. Parents, if you're watching this video, one of the most critical things they can do is put my phone number on their phone. there are at least 20 emergencies every year where they forget their ticket, where they forget their ID, and they're not going to be able to take their test without it. And we have a new test administrator this year, so it might even be more difficult if you forget it. Please have them put my number down. I'm going to say that again. It's 352-201-1771. Next thing is, I want to explain to everyone about the scoring. And students, the best thing you can do is get your parent in here right now so that they understand how we're going to get past this thing. There are 2 ways to pass this test. Actually, there's 4 different ways to get a passing score with ACT and SAT. So I'm going to pull my board over here. And we're going to begin by talking about how, since we're working on the SAT right now, let's not worry so much about the ACT. There are 2 ways to pass the ACT, but we don't have many people do that. How do you get to 430? And I know from my experience in my classroom every year, I ask students, how do you get to 430? And it's always a shock to me because everybody took it, but yet nobody knows how they get to the score of 430. And if you don't know how to get there, you're not going to get there. So there are 2 ways on the SAT. One way is by getting a 430. Now here's how you get a 430. The 430 has 2 sections. You have to, it's 2 scores combined. It is the reading score and the English writing. Now, the higher you make on the reading, the less the English writing score has to be. But the lower you make on the reading, the higher this has to be. So I teach the English writing a lot. And we learned that inside out. So that if you don't get the reading score, and most of you won't, you will make it when you get a high score on English writing because, quite honestly, it's easier. And there's a lot of patterns, and I'm going to teach you those patterns. So first of all, suppose on the reading score, there are 52 questions. And most of you are going to get about 18 right. All right, so say you made 18. The SAT will curve that number up. They'll say, okay, this was a fairly easy test, so we're going to curve it up by 3. We're going to give them a 21. So what they do is they take the 21 and they multiply that times 10 for 210 points. So now you've got 210 points of the 430. You need 220 on the English writing. Well, the way you get a 220 on the English writing so that it all adds up to 430 is that you got to get a certain number right. And usually if you get about 18 right on the English writing, they'll increase that to a 22. And they will multiply that times 10 for 220. So you've got a reading score of 210 and an English writing score of 220. And if you add those together, you get 430. That is a passing score. Now, suppose you only got, some people only get 15 or 16 right over here. So then, if you got 15 right, they will give you 18. And you have 180 points. Well, 180 and 220 is 400. So that's what a lot of you did because a lot of you had 400. A lot of you had less than 400, but we're going to get there. Well, if you have 180, then you're going to have how much over here? You're going to have 250. Well, then you've got to get SAT to give you a 25 on the English writing. The way you get there is you've got to get about 20 right. Because if you get 20 right, they'll give you 25. And 25 times 10 is 250. When you add those both together, you get a 430. So our goal, what I tell my students, is get 20 right on each. And that's almost a guarantee you're going to be right. So you get 20 right on the reading and 20 right on the writing, and that will take you to 430. In fact, it's going to take you to 440 or 450, 460, which is where we want to go. So that's your first way of passing. Now, your second way of passing, sorry, I don't have my eraser, is to make a 24 in reading. Now, how do we make a 24? You don't have to worry about the English writing if you get a 24 in reading. Well, the way you do that is this. You have to get about 22 right on the reading out of 52 to get a 24. And that sounds easy, but folks, it's not. It's not easy for anyone. So it takes, I teach you from the beginning that you can't just go in thinking you're going to get the reading done and that you're going to pass the reading. You have to go in with the first two parts of the exam, reading and English writing, and you have to do your very best. You take the SAT strategies I teach you from the beginning, and you will be done with this before the end of the year. Consistently, over the past 2 years, I have gotten down to 30 students by December. Last year, it was only 25 by the time we made it to December. So if you're not believing it yet because there's 240 of you, you will. If you do what I tell you to, you will be done by Christmas. And you won't have to remain in reading the last semester. If you pass on the August exam, you won't even have to be in reading at all your senior year, and nobody wants that for you. So we need to work hard over the next 4 weeks, and we need to find a way to get this passing score. Okay, so the next thing is it is important to know your SAT tips. So I need you to have your SAT tips out, and I need you to follow along with me because this is going to be your first instruction. Okay, so there are questions, and if you took the exam that I gave you, that I sent you, which a lot of you probably didn't, but I need you to start taking the exam so we see where you're at. And I've got 8 of them. You've only got 1 of them so far, so there's more coming. And if you haven't taken the other one, get ready to take it. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to take it and not worry about timing, how long it takes you. I need to know for data reasons where you're at. Can you get, if you did it and everybody gave you all day long to do it, how many would you get right? That tells me as an instructor what your possibilities are. The same thing with English writing. Take it. Don't worry about timing. We'll do timing later. Right now, you take the exam. Let's see how many you can get right. A lot of you, if you're getting 25 right, you're in good shape already. You're probably going to pass in August. But if you don't get that many, we'll get you there. It may take a little bit longer. So get out your papers that are tips for the SAT. And I'm going to go through this one at a time. I'll use the board if I feel like I need to. Let's get this erased. And as far as questions go, if you don't understand, I am going to be online from 9 to 11 tomorrow. I'm sending this to you on Sunday from 9 to 11 on Monday, and from 7 to 9 at night, every day of the week. So I'm going to give you assignments. I'm going to send you videos. You watch the videos, do what I tell you to, and then we'll have time for discussion and questions. Because the one thing that works with Zoom is you can ask me questions, you can type them in and ask them, and I can reply. That will work. So be ready for your questions, write them down as we move along, and then I will answer them. Okay, tips for the SAT. This is the English writing exam. So if you've seen what it looks like, you get, you have 35 minutes to get 40 questions done. So the quicker you get a question answered correctly, the better off you are. And let me say this, you're not going to pass if you only do half of them. It's impossible. You have to do all of them. And you can get them all done in the 35-minute period once you learn strategies and the tips on the SAT. So look at your SAT papers. It should look like this. And let's talk about 3 types of questions that may or may not be on the test. Okay, if you excuse me just a minute, I need to get my eraser. All right. So, the first three tips are this. You're looking at a question in English writing, and it will give you 4 answers. One answer is no change, and the other 3 are answers that could be the answer. So you look at the test, and you go, okay, they're asking me if I should use the word knower. You go back to the sentence that's in that paragraph. You read that paragraph. That's where the answer is. And if you find the word neither, then the answer has to be knower. I've seen that on several exams, maybe 2 or 3. So knowing that can get you some questions correct. Also, if in the answer, in the 4 answers, you find the word or, then you immediately go back and see if you find the word either. If either is there, then you know the answer has to be or. Another thing, but also. Not only goes with but also. You can't have but also without not only. I can't think of a time, can you? If you look at a person and you say, not only did John go to the grocery store for his mother, but he also unloaded the car when he got back. You can't say not only without having but also. So if you see in the answers, but also, you know, if you go back and you find not only, that will be the answer. That's the first tips. Okay, next. You will see, most of you know this, a parentheses. Now, if you see one parentheses in a sentence, but you don't see the other one, then you know the answer in the 4 answers has to be the other one that goes like this to close them out. It takes 2 parentheses in a sentence. Now, if the other one's there, then you know the one over here that's got a parentheses in it can't be the answer. So it's important to know that you always have 2 parentheses in a sentence. If you see one that's there, or if you see one that's in an answer, then you go, wait a minute, I need to go back. If I find another parentheses, then that's got to be the answer. Okay. Next thing I need you to do is I need you to get your computers out and look up a website for me. It's UNC semicolons and colons. So that's the University of North Carolina, semicolons and colons. All right? So I'll give you a little bit of time to look that up before I explain to you. It is going to be critically important that you understand how to use a semicolon or colon. It's going to be critically important that you know how to use them because there are so many exams that have 10 questions that involve semicolons and colons. So the University of North Carolina has about the best website that you can find for semicolons and colons. Okay, so as you're scrolling down, the first thing is you're going to find semicolons. And it's going to explain to you that semicolons it's going to tell you that semicolons are used for 2 reasons. One, they are used to attach lists. I call them simple lists. And 2, they are used to connect sentences, independent sentences. So if you look at the very beginning, you would use a semicolon with this sentence. I went to the grocery store to purchase fruit. Semicolon, apples, oranges, and grapes. You could do that. You could use a semicolon there. What does a semicolon look like? A semicolon looks like this. It's got a dot and a comma underneath it. That's what a semicolon is used for. So you can use it when you're preparing a sentence that includes a list. Okay? A semicolon is also used to connect two sentences that are independent of each other. One doesn't necessarily have to have the other one. For instance, I went to the grocery store today. Apples, grapes, and oranges were all on sale. You can connect those two sentences by using a semicolon because those sentences are independent, and independently they can stand alone. You're also going to learn as you're reading through this website, and it doesn't take long to read it, so you probably need to read this for yourself. It takes you 5 minutes. How to use colons. Same way you use semicolons, but basically a little different. For a semicolon, you connect a list, but the list refers back to the first sentence. You must have that list in order to make the first sentence sound correct. For instance, my roommate gave me the thing I needed most, colon, compassion and friendship. That's how you use a semicolon. But you don't know what they needed the most if you don't know if you don't have that list. Now, the next question I'll ask you, because this is on the test 2 or 3 times, can a list be one thing? And I'll let you think just a minute about can a list be one thing? And what I find is a lot of people don't get it to start off with, but I'm going to give you an example. So everybody just stop and think a minute and then tell yourself whether you think a list can be one thing. And the answer to that question is yes, it can. Why can it be? And many of you are surprised, I know. Why can it be? Because if your mom asks you to make a grocery store list out for her to go to the grocery store, would it not be okay to say, I just want peanut butter, and that's the list? Of course it is. So a list can be one thing. So you could say, my roommate gave me the one thing I needed the most, colon, companionship. That would be a correct sentence. It is very critical to understand semicolons and colons. And I need you to review that on your own more than once. And then I'm going to try to keep explaining it each time that I do a video for you. As you scroll on down, you're going to see that they explain dashes. Dashes increasingly are on the exam. You need to know how to use a dash, whether you use 1 or 2, really. So when you look down at the bottom, at the very bottom, you scroll down, it talks about when to use a dash and how many do you use. Well, what is a dash used for is the first question. What would you use a dash for? If you can't say that you use it for emphasis or something similar to emphasis, then you don't know how to use dashes. Dashes are used to say, this is important. My grandpa talked about his country all the time, dash Ireland. So it was important for the writer to let you know that Ireland was the country that he was talking about so that he can explain the rest of the story. How many dashes do you use there? 1, because it's at the end of the sentence. You could have said Ireland, dash, my grandmother's favorite country ruled the world. Ireland is at the beginning, 1 dash after Ireland. So if it's at the beginning or the end that you want to emphasize something, you use 1 dash. If it's in the middle that you want to emphasize something, for instance, the lockbox contained money, important papers, diamonds, rubies, dash, in the room. Those things in the middle is what's very important. So you're going to put 2 dashes, 1 on each side. You need to read about dashes. It will be on the test, and there's going to be, usually now they put more than 1. Knowing those first few things I've taught you can be as many as 10 questions of the 20 that you need on the English writing. So the more you learn these tips and the faster you learn them, the faster you pass this test, the more that this reading requirement is over. What is the real key, though, between a colon and semicolon? Listen carefully. The first part before a colon or a semicolon has to be a complete sentence. Let me say that again. This is the most important thing to know. The first part before a semicolon or colon has to be a complete sentence. If it's not, you can't put a colon or semicolon there. That's another critical ingredient that you must know about colons and semicolons. That is also on that website. Okay, I want you to also look, when they talk about semicolons and colons, they talk about words that can't be before. They cannot be before a semicolon or colon. Words such as. Such as And then you can't have a colon and then list something. You can't do that. You can't have however before a colon or a semicolon and then put something out. Read that section and those words. You cannot have those before a colon or semicolon, or that's not the answer if they're trying to get you to do that. Next question. Next tip. Usually you don't have a comma before the word such as. Just kind of keep that in your mind. It's possible, but highly unlikely. However, I can't find a time that you use such as and then you have a comma after it. So, for instance, such as, comma like that, you're not going to see. So if you see such as with a comma, then don't mark it as the answer. Because right after such as, you're going to give the examples of what is such as. That all goes together. You don't pause between such as and examples. Okay? Be careful with the word so on the exam and the answers, because so was not a common term that was used from years ago. And the reason I say this is this. Done a lot of research on this. These passages, so many of them were written, some of them 100 years ago, some of them 200 years ago, that you have to do on SAT. They didn't use the word so in their writing. So be real careful. I've seen it so be the answer one time out of probably 20. Be real careful when you see the word so. It's probably not your answer. This is a guarantee, though. They're going to have some questions that are going to ask you to combine sentences and make the answer better than what's already there. When you see that question on the English writing side, the shorter answer is the answer. Let me say that again. When you combine sentences, when that type of question comes up, the shorter answer is the answer. And this is why. This test, actually, the SAT, was not made for Florida students to pass their reading. We use it for that, but that's not what it was made for. Whenever you take this exam, colleges are looking at you to see if you would do well at their school. And the one thing that professors don't want to see is a lot of long, lengthy writing. So many of you, honestly, were taught as you were coming up, write lots of descriptive adjectives, and you also, on your own, strung things out because you had to have a 500-word essay, so you just added words just because you couldn't quite get there with what the assignment was. It really doesn't matter whose fault it is that you write like that, but college professors want you to get to the point and be short so that they can understand what you're saying in a quick way, because they grade so many papers. If they don't cut out some of the quote-unquote garbage, then they would never get done. Okay. The next thing I'm going to talk about is transition words. You do not have a list of transition words, and that's one of the next things that I will send you. you are going to have to memorize the different ways that transition words are used. And those are words like however, nonetheless, nevertheless, and they're in different categories. And I'm not going to explain them on this video, but we will catch them on the next one. And I will send you a copy of transition words. You must know those inside out in order to make a good grade on this test. And you must know how to use them, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. On the exam, in the writing, we're still in the writing, they're going to have graphs. You tackle graphs like they're the easiest thing in the world. Think about that a minute. They're not going to put extremely difficult graphs in the English portion. You're going to get it in the science portion, but not in the English portion. So you really, really, really need to think about that. That when I get to a graph, I'm going to get that one right. And it's not going to take you long. You're going to read it, approach it, that it's easy, and I promise you, you will get it right. A big tip, and this is even on the ACT website, on the SAT in particular. When you see a shorter answer, and all the words look the same, but there's one that's shorter, watch out, because that may very well be the answer. It is the same premise that we talked about with writing shorter. If you see 4 words there, and then 3 words in 1 word, and you see the word understand, then the answer is probably understand. Probably not the other ones that's just adding words. The shorter answer is the answer many times, but not all of the time. And you have to know when, and you will get that in practice, when the shorter answer is the answer. If you go through the exam and you mark all short answers, you're not going to pass. I will teach you how to recognize when that comes up and when to know when the shorter answer is the answer. This is important. Most of you know this. ITS apostrophe is not a word. So don't mark it as a word because it's not. It's never the answer, but it'll be on the test. And they'll try to trick you. Don't ever, ever pick that. IT apostrophe S is the same thing as it is. And you've got to always break that out in the answer to see if it works. It's time to go home. You would break that out as it is time to go home, and that is correct because IT apostrophe S is the same thing as it is. It's ITS. And keep in mind, I read somewhere where the word it's is the most missed word in English writing. It's, with no apostrophe, is only talking about one thing, and it is possessive. What does possessive mean? Possessive means ownership. So, for instance, you could say the flower was ruby red. Its petals stood out, really bright green. So, ITS, petals. It owns the petals. Its is ownership. Okay? All right. On the SAT, there are a couple of questions you always skip and come back to. Keep in mind, I said you've got to get it all done. But if you get on these questions and you stay right there, you will not finish the test and you could waste a lot of time. The questions that ask where you need to place a sentence in a paragraph, skip them and come back. They're not that hard, but they can take you 15 minutes and you don't have that much time to waste on it. So just know, skip those, come back. You still need to get those done if you possibly can. Okay, with vocabulary, when you're trying to figure out, they got 4 different words and you don't know what any of them mean, or you might know what 2 mean, or you might need 1. Always eliminate those words that you know it cannot be the answer. If one word makes sense, if you go, that sounds right, but it seems too easy, it's probably the answer. And if there's another word that makes no sense to you, why pick it when you've got one that you believe is probably the answer? Pick the one that you believe. Do not get in your head that because the other one is long and difficult, it's the answer, because It doesn't mean that. It is so easy for the people who make out these exams to put in a very difficult word and hope you pick it because you don't know what it means. They may not have known its meaning. They might have picked it up out of the dictionary themselves. But you need to be careful. If you narrow it down to 2 words, then pick the one that you think is best. Otherwise, if you don't know it all, if you don't understand any of them, do the letter of the day. Leave it blank and come back. You're going to do some guessing. I'm going to teach you how to do the guessing the right way too. Okay, when choosing the answer for adding information, for instance, they'll say, should you add this sentence into the paragraph? If you say no, it doesn't have anything to do with what it's talking about, and you don't ever put in some information in there that doesn't match up. You can't be talking, for instance, let's say, for instance, I always give this example in my classroom. Let's say you went out on a date last night and you and your boyfriend didn't get along and you were explaining to your girlfriend all about it and, you were just really giving him a hard way to go. And then in the middle of it, you say, I think I'll go to the grocery store. And then you start talking about him again. You don't need that. And probably some of us do that, but I'm just giving you an example of when you write, you don't just stick something random in the middle of anything. If it doesn't belong, then you need to pick the answer that says it blurs or it confuses. That's the answer because there's going to be 2 no and 2 yeses. So if you say, no, I don't need this, then pick the one that says this confuses the paragraph or it blurs. You need to know the difference between the words then and than. Okay, than is used with amounts. Something is more than something. He has more pennies than dollars. Something is more than something. Then is to be used when you're talking about about distance. Then is about order. It's about something happened, then something else happened, then something else. The word there, T-H-E-R-E, is talking about distance. Something is over there. T-H-E-I-R is talking about people. T-H-E-I-R. You must remain in the same verb tense as what has already been written. For instance, you can't put a singular verb with a plural noun and vice versa. Now, where that comes important is sometimes they'll have answers that end in ed, which is past tense. So you go back, if all the verbs being written in that structure is past tense, then you're going to pick the answer as the past tense verb. That's going to be really important. Most things are written in past. Keep that in mind because most of these articles are written from years ago about something that already happened. So you've got past, present, and future. Be very careful that you choose the right one. The key will be, in order to have subject-verb agreement, can you pick out the subject? And I have really found that is one of our really, really difficult things to do. And one thing I want to do this year is teach you about prepositions, prepositional phrases. Those are things that block you from getting an opportunity to pick the right subject, which allows you to pick the right plural or singular verb. So we're going to go over that, and that will be on another video, but it's really not necessary right now. Just remember, if an answer you're looking for a past tense and all the other verbs are in past tense, then you should use past tense. Be careful with the overuse of pronouns. What are pronouns? He, she, it, they. Analyze what the difference is in each answer. You need to use a pronoun to reference back to it if they already said it. So if they said he in a sentence, you don't turn around and say he again. You only need to say he one time because you've already referenced who it is you're talking about. So be careful of the overuse of pronouns. Delete the underlined portion is also an answer. You usually have 2 or 3 on an exam, and delete the underlined portion will be D. It is the answer about half the time. Do not think that it can't be the answer is more the point. So when you read it, read the sentence and see if it's needed. If not, the underlined portion, take it out. And mark delete the underlined portion as the answer, because half the time it is. For instance, it's the same thing as for example. For instance, is the same thing as for example. They use for instance a whole lot more now because I think they're trying to confuse you when really it's the same thing as saying for example. So just keep that in your head when you're trying to answer something and you go, oh, that's an example. Oh, well, it doesn't say for example. Well, it says for instance, which is the same thing. If the question on the test asks you to delete the first sentence of a paragraph, the answer is probably no. It's very hard to create a beginning sentence that doesn't match up as an introductory sentence to a paragraph. So be real careful where the location is when you're trying to determine whether to delete that sentence or not. If it starts off the paragraph, you're probably going to keep it, probably because it's going to introduce what's coming. Be real careful. And the reason is, it would be very hard for them to start putting in wrong introductory sentences. It would confuse the reader. So the first thing that should go off in your head is, no, wait a minute. That makes no sense. Or it should be, that's the first sentence. Let's see if it introduces what we're getting ready to talk about. Oh, it does. So I'm going to pick to keep it. Read the questions carefully. You might have the right answer in your head, but not answer the question they asked you correctly. So be real careful with that. And you must get everything done. You have to get all 40. And the reason I say that, if you do 30 and we're trying to get 20 right, you're going to have a difficult time getting that mark out of 30. If you do 40, yeah, you probably get 50% of them. You'll probably get the 20 you need. If you're not going to do them all and you're going to go too slow because you got to move, and your speed will continue to get better as I teach you the strategies, you'll know the answer automatically. You don't spend 2 or 3 minutes on a question, you'll move on. So know that you've got to get all the questions done on the English writing. If you do not get the answers done or you do not finish, there is a way out. Or there's some you skip because you had no idea, and skip them if you have no idea at all. Don't just guess. Do the letter of the day. Now my question to you is, what is the letter of the day? How do I know what letter to pick? And I want you to know that anything that I'm telling you today, I can back up. I can show you research. I can show you everything that tells you why you have to do it the way I'm telling you to. So there's some of you sitting back and I'm looking at you and going, tell me what you think. If you're at the end of a test, you got 10 to go. Let's hope you only got 2 to go. And you go, oh, I'm going to have to do the letter of the day. They're saying time's up. What letter would you pick, A, B, C, or D? A lot of you are sitting there and you're going to say C, because that's what your teachers taught you. In fact, I taught that a while back, way back. But what I learned in my research, and really came up with this on my own, to be honest with you, is that the computer now decides what the answer is, A, B, C, or D. Teachers don't do it anymore. Now, when teachers used to make out the test, C would be the answer a lot of time. So yes, we would guess C, thinking the teacher got tired and she put 2 bad answers and then put the right answer, then made something up for D. But the real truth is, it can be A, B, C, or D because of how the computer does it. And let me show you. So, on each passage, there are 10 questions. Now, the computer spits out answers to make it fairly equal. They're never going to make them all D's or all C's or B's or A's, because the real truth is somebody could get lucky and get all 10 right, and they don't want that. So that's not going to happen. So basically, you got 10 answers, so you're either going to have 3 A's, 3 D's, 2 B's, or 2 C's. So they're going to look like this. The answer sheet is going to look something like that. Just really, if you got all 10 right, they would be skewed that way. But suppose you didn't get 2 of them done. Now that you know there's an even chance that it could be A, B, C, or D, what would you make the letter of the day? Well, the letter of the day that I'm going to pick for the two answers, I don't know, because if you got all of these right, and you're pretty confident, but you've only got one C, then you're going to put C for the other two, because the odds are they're going to be C, because they're all fairly even. So the letter of the day is the letter that you pick the least. The sooner you get that in your head. Let me show you something that's not letter of the day that my students do, and I still don't know who's teaching it. They won't tell me. I know somebody's teaching it that way. But this is not letter of the day. That is not letter of the day. That's not knowing what you should be doing, okay? Letter of the day is straight down with one letter. That's why they call it letter, not letters, letter. So get used to that. I find people still don't believe me, and they still don't do it the way I tell them to, and they still don't pass until the end. The sooner you're learning to do this right, the better off you will be. If a question wants you to title someone, for instance, Mr. Knoll, a teacher at Oak Ridge High School. Then you put a comma after Mr. Knoll and a comma after Oak Ridge High School. It's set off by commas. Teaches reading. You must have a comma to refer back to Mr. Knoll. You set them off in commas. That's important. It will be on there. Okay. So that pretty much takes you through the English portion. You will look at your SAT tips and it will lead into reading. We're not going to talk about reading right now. I want to focus on the English writing. I want to make sure that you're beginning to move forward, get more answers right, increase your speed so that you can pass this test in August. What I want you to do is I would like for you to watch this video, take notes. You'll have this video forever that you can always go back and continue to review it before the test. And then ask questions on Monday when we get together. Let me say this as we part. It is truly important to focus at this point on your education. 240 of you need to get your high school diploma at the end of the year. And everyone matters. What do I do as an instructor when I find someone's really not interested? My first step, of course, is to talk to the student, find out what's going on. And then I talk to your parent. And I let your parent take care of things at home. And I find that's very, very successful. If you do not buy into this process, you'll be with me next June still trying to pass this exam. It is not hard to do. Get set for the English writing, and I will teach you how to make a better score on the reading as we move along. I want you to go back to the English writing portion that I gave you. Sit down and try to take that test now and see if you can get a few more answers. Go to the University of North Carolina Writing Center. Try your best to read it and understand it, and if you have questions, you can ask me on Monday through Zoom. So what is our schedule going to look like? My plan right now, because I think this will work, and I know of college students that have done this, I'm going to send you a video the night before. So for instance, you're getting this one on Sunday. We're going to work on it on Monday. I'll send you another video, which some of these are not going to be as elaborate, because this one tells you all about the tips. I'll send you another video answering questions, encouragement. Sometimes we'll do even inspirational videos that I think you will see that you can, if they can overcome, you can too. And then we will get instruction on the next day. We've already been through 1 week. I've got 1 more week to get this information into you, get you registered for exams along the way. And I'm going to ask that they let me teach this in the last 2 weeks of July, but there's no guarantee they will. I think we need that time, and I think you would agree with that. So what are your goals over the week? Your goals are to be registered for the SAT at the end of August. So you need to send your username and password to me so I can get your waiver on there. And I will let you know if you're out of waivers, because some of you are. Not many, but some. And then be on the Zoom when you have questions. I want you on there anyway to see what everybody else's questions are, because we learn from each other. And my explanation will be not only on Zoom, but I will also explain to you on video the questions that come up. And no question is a bad question. You need to be asking questions, because we're at a distance right now, and I can't be there right in front of you as badly as I want to be. I want you to take care, be well. Let me know if there's issues that you think I need to take care of. Let me know how the video went for you. Did you understand it? Did I talk too fast? Whatever. And we will see you next time. Have a great day.